Shazam! Fury of the Gods had the unenviable task of following up 2019's Shazam, which is a movie that I absolutely adore. See, the first Shazam was arguably one of the best movies in the now defunct DCEU continuity. In fact, it had a unique and fun concept where a kid named Billy transforms into a superpowered adult played by Zachary Levi, finally balanced a childish sense of whimsy alongside dark tonal shifts with pinpoint accuracy, which is a very uncommon trait in today's pop cinematic landscape. It had an intimidating villain because, Mark Strong's Dr. Zavanna is literally trying to murder children. The movie featured devastating emotional beats, as well as some resonance themes about the meaning of family, no relation, and then there's just the fact that Shazam had an abundance of heart. And for all of those reasons, the first Shazam is one of the best superhero movies of the last 5 years. I overwhelmingly love it. Yet, with that said, the movie left a mark so strong, that a potential follow-up would really have to bring its A-game in order to be considered in the same caliber as the original. It would need to be excellent. Yet, now that the sequel, Shazam! Fury of the Gods, has at last arrived at multiplexes, I gotta say, I feel a bit underwhelmed, mostly because the movie isn't of the same pedigree as the first one. While sure, Shazam! Fury of the Gods has some solid action, enjoyable banter, and a fun turn by Zachary Levi, weird external feuds with The Rock aside, the sequel is just far less emotionally impactful as the first film and has numerous problems that hold it back. It has issues. One of these flaws is that the kid version of Billy, i.e. the one played by Asher Angel, isn't in the movie all that much. In fact, the vast majority of time that we see Billy is in his adult man-child Zachary Levi persona. And honestly, that kind of devalues the IP's unique concept quite a bit. After all, the movie should feature Asher Angel's young Billy alongside his superpowered adult alter ego equally, especially given that Billy's superpowered adoptive siblings in the Shazam family, like Freddie Freeman, no relation, receive an equitable amount of screen time alongside their superpowered adult counterparts. And for that, Billy the Kid should have gotten the same treatment, yet he's barely even in the film, which is something that ultimately affects Shazam! Fury of the Gods' emotional resonance. See, Billy's emotional arc is twofold. For one thing, Billy is both overly protective of his adoptive siblings and newfound family, all while he is also concerned about aging out of the foster system now that he is about to turn 18. He fears that his new parents will abandon him, just like his piece of shit biological mother did. And admittedly, the first thematic element about how Billy is overprotective of his brothers and sisters works because the Zachary Levi version of Billy spends a lot of screen time with the Shazam family. Yet, however, it's the second thematic element about parental abandonment that really feels thematically undercooked. After all, Billy's foster parents don't know that he masquerades as a superpowered adult man-child, meaning that the only time that Billy and his guardians can really have meaningful character development is when Billy is in his younger Asher Angel acted form, which is a problem because, as stated earlier, that aforementioned Asher Angel acted form isn't in the movie all that much. He's honestly underutilized, meaning that Billy doesn't spend too much time with his loving foster parents or dwelling on his abandonment issues, which ultimately causes this potentially strong and relevant thematic element to fall flat. It's overall underdeveloped. Shazam! Fury of the Gods' overall conflict isn't all that good either. See, the film's antagonistic force comes in the form of the children of the Titan Atlas, i.e. the Greek mythological figure that is forced to bench press planet Earth for an eternity, and these offspring of Atlas from the God realm desire revenge against the Earth realm for draining their own godly world of magic. And that's honestly it as far as the main conflict goes, which is a problem. After all, Shazam! Fury of the Gods' antagonistic force doesn't really complement the film's themes regarding Billy's abandonment issues or overprotectiveness, and that's very much different from the first Shazam, a movie where Mark Strong's villain in Dr. Zavanna accentuated Billy's character development and the overall themes of the film. In that movie, the themes in regards to Billy's foster family and the superpowered conflict with Dr. Zavanna both deal in worthiness. The film posits the question of whether or not Billy is worthy of his superpowers, as well as if Billy's new foster family is worthy of Billy of himself, which were all good questions that caused that movie's personal and fantastical storytelling elements to be intertwined. Because honestly, the first Shazam was an overall more cohesive experience compared to its sequel. And while sure, Shazam! Fury of the Gods God's central conflict taps into the idea of whether or not Billy and his family are worthy of having superpowers, it is not exactly a great theme, seeing as Billy had already resolved that thematic thread in the first movie. If anything, Shazam! Fury of the Gods retreads thematic ground here, and as a result, the new movie would have been better off sticking to the plan that was teased during the end credits of the first Shazam, the one where Dr. Savannah would return and fight on behalf of Mr. Mind, i.e. the evil telepathic hungry caterpillar. It would have ultimately been preferred to what we ultimately received, because Shazam! Fury of the Gods conflict is overall underwhelming. Additionally, the overarching connections to the now defunct DCEU are awkward as well, mostly because the DCEU timeline as we know it is done. If anything, the continuity is deader than Batman's parents or Google Stadia. After all, just a few months ago, Warner Brothers cleaned DC's house and installed James Gunn as its new de facto leader in order to spearhead a new DC cinematic universe and continuity that is far more cohesive and consistent in terms of storytelling and quality, meaning that Shazam! Fury of the Gods, a movie made by DC's old guard that exists in the soon-to-be deceased DCEU, represents a dying cinematic universe with unfilled potential. And thus, the DCEU continuity as represented in Shazam! Fury of the Gods is over. And as a result, whenever Shazam! Fury of the Gods shoehorns references to the old DCEU continuity, even going so far as to feature a cameo, I couldn't help but be reminded of how ultimately meaningless these references and teases are now that the whole continuity will receive a creative mulligan by the time Flashpoint releases. In terms of an overarching cinematic universe, it all feels kind of pointless, because in terms of being an overarching and cohesive narrative, Shazam! Fury of the Gods represents an aimless universe. And sadly, that word, aimless, is a good way to describe Shazam! Fury of the Gods as a whole, because overall the movie lacks cohesion, both in terms of narrative and thematic storytelling, and when it comes to being connected to a relevant continuity. And while sure, the film has some solid action and good character banter, i.e. there's still fun to be had, Shazam! Fury of the Gods is nowhere close to the standard set by its far superior predecessor. And add on the fact that there's a weird romance subplot where an immortal long-lived deity courts a teenage boy to the point that it is an awkward love story that's essentially Twilight times 1,000, and Shazam! Fury of the Gods does not warrant any form of intense emotion, for good or for ill. And that's honestly just not enough of a justification to see yet another movie in the overly crowded superhero genre. Sure, Shazam! Fury of the Gods has some solid CGI action slugfests and monster battles, but the movie is just missing the necessary human element that a good superhero movie really requires these days. It's overall missing the actual magic that movies are capable of. And with that, that was the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave a like rating, share, subscribe, ring the bell, and leave a comment telling me what you thought of Shazam! Fury of the Gods. Also, please consider checking out my Patreon page. $1 a month gets you onto this credit sequence, and $5 a month allows you to make a quick review and impressions requests. The link to my Patreon is in the description. And speaking of Patreon, I just want to thank my patrons, particularly my high tier ones in Samantha Devlin, Mom, and Morgan. Thank you so much for supporting what I do. Love y'all.